All right, here we're going to look at step 3, generating solutions. So this step's very similar to step 1, where we're looking to generate 16 solutions. We're going to be using the same categories that you would have used for your problems in step 1. So you could reference back to those 18 different categories. The ones that were like education, defense, arts, religion, all those guys, the 18, transportation. So let's go ahead and begin. So in step 2, you create your underlying problem, which is the core problem of the future scene. And in that, if you guys remember, there was different components. You had the condition phrase where you're kind of setting it up. Then you had the stem, how might we? And then here's then 2 important parts, which are the key verb phrase and the purpose. So you need to be addressing, that key verb phrase and purpose in this step 3. Because whatever you established in your underlying problem, you are now trying to generate solutions to address the underlying problems. So you're not generating solutions that match all 16 of your step 1. You're only generating solutions to help fix what you identified in step 2 as the underlying problem. All right? So with that being said, you'll see that it needs to be relevant to the key verb phrase and the purpose. So we can't just make up general solutions. They have to be tied back, which is why it's so important to have a good step 2 that's broad enough to where you can generate solutions for it. Okay? So, this was one of the critical errors. If there's no purpose in the underlying problem, there's then some special things that the graders have to do if you did not have a purpose in your underlying problem. But let's assume that we do. This is a really good idea. Keep a copy of the underlying problem in front of you as you go through the remaining steps. So the rest of the book after step 2 ties into the underlying problem. So, in step 1, if you remember, we had to use may, might, or could. In step 3, you say will, because at this point, we're indicating solutions that will work. So it's a little strange that they make us say the word will, but you can't use may, might, or could now. You do that for potential problems in step 1, but now that we're coming up with solutions, we're saying will, because we're assuming that these things will fix the issues. So you have to elaborate on the solutions and establish a who, what, how, and why. So like who's doing something. You can make up fun ones. A lot of times people have various musical artists go on some type of tour to raise awareness or to make up money, for some type of concept. You can create, NASA could create a sub-NASA group that addresses something that could help as a solution idea. So you can make up whoever the who that you want. Or go with more logical ones, that may be tied into the future scene. So you do have to establish why your solution will fix the problem too. You also want to make sure you're using different who's as you're moving through the solutions. You don't always want to be saying that the Red Hot Chili Peppers musical artist band is the one who's doing all of these things. Pick some other people. You can do some music stars, you can do some scientists, you can do some politicians or world groups, countries even, mix up the who. So let's read this paragraph here. Remember, the who in your solution idea is the who that will get this solution idea started. For example, in a solution idea for stress in school, such as parents will talk to their children about school so they won't be stressed out. Parents are the what in this case. A lot of parents don't talk to their children about school, so something needs to happen to start them talking. So the who in this case could be someone who's telling the parents to talk with their kids. So you could say, hey, the guidance counselors at school sent out a public service announcement to all parents saying, parents, talk to your students about school and how to navigate the stresses, and then that would reduce stress in school. So keep an eye on that you do have to kind of establish a who to get some of these processes going, because not everybody is going to just solve the problem on their own. They need someone, a who, to get the process started. So listed below are several solution ideas for the underlying problem, and this ties back to the ones we've seen in the previous videos. Because tourists are causing damage, how might we discourage the tourists who visit Antarctica in 2025 from taking rock samples from Antarctica home with them so they do not destroy Antarctica's natural environment? So let's break this down, because this is a step 2. Here's their condition phrase, because tourists are causing damage. Here's their stem, how might we. Here's their key verb phrase, discourage the tourists in 2025 from taking rock samples from Antarctica's home with them. Here's the purpose, so they do not destroy Antarctica's natural environment. So the following solution ideas relate to the key verb phrase and the purpose of this underlying problem. Delta will charge an extremely high fee for tourists who want to carry rock samples from Antarctica back on the plane with them. Thus, the tourists will be discouraged from taking rock samples because they won't want to pay to take them home with them, and Antarctica's natural environment will be preserved. So this example tells who will do what. So Delta, the airplane company, is charging an additional fee, so that's the who. That's what they're doing, so that the solution idea will solve the underlying problem. It also says how the plan will work, about how they're charging higher fees, and how or why it will achieve the purpose. It's achieving the purpose because less people will want to take rock samples back if it's too expensive. In 2025, General Electric, GE, the company, will invent a robot to guard rock formations in Antarctica so tourists will be discouraged from taking the rocks home with them. Therefore, Antarctica's natural environment will remain in its natural place. So this last solution idea explains the key verb phrase and purpose, but it does not explain how the solution idea will work. It's got some of the good stuff at first. Talks about the who. Says that they will guard the rock formations. But if you think about that, it's like, guard them how? Is this robot, tackling people when they're coming up to the rocks? Is it forming boundaries to prevent people to get to rocks in the first place? I'm not quite sure how these robots are guarding the rock formations or what that'll look like. Because without elaboration, it's like, are these flying robots? Because if they're not flying robots, how are they going to, navigate this mountainous terrain? So I really like this foundation of this solution. It's a cool concept. You got some robot rock guardians out there, but how are they doing it? In 2025, tourists will take animals from Antarctica home with them instead of rock samples. This will protect Antarctica's natural environment. So this one says, think creative and futuristically. Imaginative interventions are fun, but they must include how or why explanations. An invention can't just happen because someone says it will. Use your knowledge and research to bring new approaches to existing ideas. So in this one, it's got some type of concept here, right? They're taking home animals from Antarctica instead of rock samples. I would argue that there's some creativity. They're finding a solution to people could take this home instead of the rocks. But this particular solution is creative almost to a fault, because we're trying to preserve the natural environment. If we're taking animals from the environment, is that really preserving the natural environment? So make sure your solutions, especially the ones you try to get more creative, are first off possible, because I would then also ask, how are these people taking animals home, like back on the plains or putting a polar bear? You can't put a polar bear in a backpack. So think about that as you're coming with your solutions, and make sure that they actually solve the problem and don't make it worse in some other way. You're not preserving the natural beauty of the environment if you're taking the animals, which are a part of the environment. So these two solutions here are just some interesting things to think about, to where you can have some good ideas, but really think back to the who, what, how, especially the how and the why. How will the problem work? What kind of robots are they? And why will it work? The robots are equipped with smelly gas, and they spray it on people if they get too close to the rocks. Something like that. All right. So that's step 3. And you'll also be referencing back to your categories. There was 18 categories. Make sure to pull up back that list and check those out, because you will use those to kind of help guide your creative thinking as you're creating your 16 solution ideas.